Good morning. This is Michelle Comer, North Dakota Commissioner of Commerce. Welcome to the more than 1,500 attendees at this special business briefing to introduce you to the Economic Resiliency Grant. What brought us together today is the significant impact to North Dakota's economy caused by a declining agriculture economy, a drastic reduction in oil prices beginning in the early spring, and on its heels, a global pandemic hitting North Dakota in mid-March. But during times of national challenge and instability, North Dakota has had a history of insulating and innovating, and there is promising news. May's unemployment rate was 8.6%, down from 9.2% in April, which is the fourth lowest in the nation, and we are seeing other positive trends. In June, North Dakota was named among the top 10 job markets to have weathered the pandemic by moneyrates.com. As of June 27th, North Dakota had a total of 33,645 continued unemployment claims, which is a 25% reduction from just the prior week. Consumer confidence in our region, as measured by the June 2020 Consumer Confidence Survey, shows a moderate increase in June, but it is still well below pre-pandemic levels. The people of North Dakota are resilient, intelligent, and committed to their communities. During this pandemic, we have proven that we can flex and create a new normal for ourselves when needed. These new temporary solutions, like utilization of drive-thrus, shopping online, and working from home, have kept us safe, but have also led to a huge impact to our economy, especially in the personal services, retail, and hospitality industries. And while federal government has made billions of dollars available through the CARES Act to individuals, small businesses, healthcare systems, and other important sectors of our economy to mitigate the impact of the pandemic, gaps continue to exist, including customer reluctance to re-enter the marketplace. Now we need consumers to repopulate the marketplace and give your businesses the revenue you need to thrive and sustain employment. We need to recapture the markets and consumers before the temporary solutions like staying home, shopping less, traveling less, dining out less become the preferred solutions. We need to restore consumer confidence and reinvigorate our economy while ensuring the health and safety of customers and employees. And while we hope the COVID-19 virus on a global scale may be short-lived, our investments need to create sustainable, healthy places for our marketplaces to thrive into the future. Consumer confidence will take time to recover, and it may be fragile once achieved. In response to this crisis, we have the opportunity to influence this now, which may define both our immediate tomorrow and the success of future generations. We have the opportunity to continue to be a model for other states. So thank you, North Dakota businesses, who, when asked to implement safety mechanisms, or some of you even closed completely for a short time, responded to help keep things safe for us all. Now we have asked you, what do you need? And your answer was, we need our customers to come back safely. The Economic Resiliency Grant is an answer to this challenge, and we look forward to sharing an overview of the program with you today so that you can begin to assemble your ideas and your proposal for a grant application. As you listen to the presentation today, as Maria said, please be prepared to ask questions at the conclusion of the session. We will not get to all of your questions, but they are each important. They will be used to build resources to assist you in the coming days. The focus of our session today is to provide you an overview of the Economic Resiliency Grant to prepare you to apply when the grant application is available late this month. But first, we are going to take a few minutes to discuss an important topic for employers, COVID-19 testing. Dr. Andy Stahl, Interim Chief Health Officer, will join us today to discuss the value of employee testing to your business, testing availability, and employer resources. We will move on to the ERG, guidelines and application process, then on to Q&A and next steps, and we will close with remarks from my colleague Eric Spencer from the Greater North Dakota Chamber, who has been a valued partner throughout this state of emergency and always. So first, As we've worked hard to do over the past 118 days of this state of emergency, we wanted to share this information with you early, but recognize that this process is still being finalized and is subject to modification. It is our goal to make this application available yet this month. We will communicate with you through our website, ndresponse.gov, our social media channels, and Commerce newsletters. To ensure that you have the most current information, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter with the handle @CommerceND. On LinkedIn, find us under the Department of Commerce, and on Instagram, Commerce North Dakota. And also sign up for our newsletters at the link provided here. This presentation will be posted online, and you will find the links available within the presentation itself. Now, we have a responsibility to make this information known as broadly as possible, and we need your help. Please share this information as widely as possible. And right now, pull out your phone, pull out your own social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and be sure to tag the Department of Commerce. I'm actually going to wait for a moment while you do this. All right, I hope you got a little kick out of that. You didn't think I was serious, but it is very, very important for you to follow Commerce's social media and newsletters because, as I said, this information is going to be developing very rapidly, and we want to make sure that we have a solid line of communication to you. As I mentioned, a recording of this presentation will be available on conclusion of this session. So before we jump into the ERG, I would like to introduce Dr. Andy Stahl, Interim Chief Health Officer, to share some information about an important part of our strategy to contain the virus, to maintain both lives and livelihoods. Thank you, Andy, for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
My name is Dr. Andrew Stahl, and I have the privilege of having recently joined the team at the North Dakota Department of Health during a very challenging time for North Dakota. I'm happy for the chance to speak with this audience today, as you have such an important role in containing this infection, and I want you to know that your priority is my priority, keeping North Dakota businesses open safely. I see the North Dakota Department of Health as your business partner. I wanted to spend a few moments on the importance of employee testing and share some resources with you, both current and in development, so that we can reach that mutual goal of keeping North Dakota open for business. Employee testing is an important way to mitigate the spread of the infection, to identify an issue before it becomes significant. We will be deploying both fixed and mobile sites over the next month to assist with testing. Proactivity is key, and the availability of testing will help you ensure that you are able to identify and isolate infections before they become widespread. In the immediate future, there will be testing sites available on or before July 20th at Dickinson, Williston, Minot, Jamestown, Devils Lake, and Bismarck. Locations in Fargo and Grand Forks will follow. We'll share additional information for dates and testing locations through our website and social media. For the time being, this testing is free and open to the public, and we urge you to implement a regular testing cadence, especially for high contact employees. The team at the North Dakota Department of Health is working together with Commerce to update North Dakota's Smart Restart protocols to include employee testing recommendations. Again, this is very important for high contact environments. A strong testing effort will allow us to control widespread infection, to save both lives and livelihoods. In addition to the confidence that you may build with your customers, if you are awarded the ERG and make infection control investments, you can multiply customer confidence through self-certification of implementation of the North Dakota Smart Restart protocols. We are working on the mechanics of how to register and self-certify so that we can provide you website badges and other materials to illustrate your commitment to infection control for your customers, to further inspire consumer confidence in patronizing your business. Thank you, Michelle, for your partnership, and we look forward to working with the North Dakota business community to keep North Dakota open for business safely.
Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome.
All right, well, now for your introduction to the ERG. The sentence that you see on this slide not only defines the purpose of the grant, but contains several key words and phrases upon which the applications will be evaluated. Private companies operating in North Dakota are eligible to receive funding for costs associated with improvements to their business for the purpose of reducing the spread of COVID-19 and instilling customer confidence in the marketplace. We will walk through eligibility, both eligible businesses and eligible expenses, next. To discuss eligibility, I'm going to walk through these underlined elements. Private companies are eligible. Ownership type, such as sole proprietor, partnership, corporation, nonprofit, is not the determinative factor. The business must be licensed to do business in North Dakota, either by the Secretary of State or a tribal licensing authority. The business must also have a permanent physical location in North Dakota. The investment proposed in the application must be for the purpose of decreasing the spread of infection, and this will have to be clearly articulated in the application. If you have already made qualified improvements from March 27th of this year till now, these expenditures may be reimbursed through the grant. Whether the improvement has already been made or you will be submitting a proposal for future improvements, take care to keep very detailed documentation, as there will be an audit of your expenses post-award. Best practice would be to keep the grant award accounted for separately, track expenses, and ensure that they are clearly documented and aligned to your proposal. Finally, marketplace. Applicants must demonstrate how they directly interface with consumers or how the improvements directly benefit consumers through supply chain impacts. While eligibility for this grant is quite broad, remembering that the spirit and intent of this grant is to inspire consumer confidence to return to the marketplace, generally, there must be both consumers and a marketplace. Therefore, companies that are able to relocate employees to remote workplaces and maintain productivity will typically be ineligible, such as offices without customer walk-ins or traffic. Personal or private residential improvements are ineligible. However, home-based businesses may still have eligible purchases, for example, if there are childcare facilities or egg-based businesses operating outside the home. Government entities, such as universities and the K-12 system, are ineligible for this grant. Other government-funded businesses may be ineligible, but they are not categorically ineligible, as we recognize that there are instances where, for example, a city may own a liquor store, a daycare, or a grocery store. Those entities will not be ineligible because they are owned by the city, because it otherwise meets the definition of a business that provides goods or services to consumers in the marketplace, which is consistent with the spirit of this grant. Any costs relating to lobbying activities are ineligible. However, a 501c6 is not categorically ineligible if it can demonstrate a purpose consistent with the spirit of this grant. You'll observe on this slide the asterisk by each of these ineligibility bullet points, and that was intentional because we recognize that there are a variety of circumstances that need to be considered, keeping in mind the purpose of the grant. No business entity will be categorically denied based on its business type, but each will be reviewed carefully for consistency with the spirit and intent of this grant. On to eligible expenses. Investments are to be made to reduce the spread of infection. These must be direct investments. Examples of direct investments include investments that reduce repetitive touch, like touchless payment systems or document signing systems, automatic faucets, toilets, and door kicks, technology to make takeout orders or drive-through orders permissible, Improvements that create distance between customers or employees, like expanded outdoor dining areas, partitions between workers who can't be socially distanced, and purchases of items that directly control infection, like personal protective equipment, UV sanitizers, and temperature checking equipment. These are just examples. You are the closest to your business and to your customer, and we expect that you will have some of the most impactful solutions, keeping in mind the spirit and intent of this grant. As I mentioned, the impact must be direct. The investment must be direct. Examples of ineligible expenses for lack of directness include marketing and advertising costs associated with spending grant money or advertising those improvements. Again, this grant is not intended for payroll costs, refinancing debt, operating costs, and all other expenses not related to COVID-19 safety measures. If you need funds for these types of expenses and have not already applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, we'll talk a little bit about this later, but that deadline has been extended until August 8th. The application process. The application will be online, accessed through ndresponse.gov COVID resources. You will be able to find it as it will be clearly placed on that page. We anticipate the grant to be open before the end of July, and we're working hard to make this possible. This is a heavy lift considering the volume of applications expected. We'll communicate with you regularly via our social media channels, press releases, our website, and ndresponse.gov, along with our newsletters. We will release additional resources like FAQs in the coming days and have more training the week of July 27th, including a training session to walk through the application. It is our intent to simplify this process the best that we can. In the application process, you will be required to make a number of certifications, including but not limited to being registered to do business in North Dakota, having one or more permanent physical locations here, and having been financially solvent prior to March and being negatively impacted financially by COVID-19. You will also have to certify that you will use the money for approved expenses only, and you'll return the difference if applicable. Again, the more specific you are in your application about how your proposal aligns with the intent of the grant, the more likely your approval. Time is of the essence in implementing safety mechanisms to reduce the spread of infection to allow customers to return to the marketplace safely. As such, you will be expected to use the grant money within 45 days of receipt in a manner consistent with your proposal, or return it promptly. Keep copious documentation. Your award will be audited to ensure funds were used for approved expenses only. If you receive the ERG and make safety improvements, you will also receive access to a North Dakota Smart Restart badge for your website, along with other materials to help you highlight the investments that you have made for your customers. These investments are important, but as important is that your customers know of them. That is what will inspire consumer confidence. As Dr. Stahl shared, the Department of Health is also working on a second acknowledgement to assist you in gaining your customers' confidence, a self-certification of compliance with North Dakota Smart Restart protocols and testing standards. We will share more information as that becomes available. With that, we're already prepared to move on to the question and answer section of this discussion this morning. As mentioned, we will not get to all the questions, but please do not let this stop you from submitting them. We will review each and every question received and make efforts to ensure their answer in resources that are being developed along with future training sessions.
Okay, Michelle, there's a couple questions that are out there. And we've covered some of these, but I want to have you qualify them. Do you accept applications from nonprofit organizations?
Thank you, Maria. Yes, the answer is yes, we do. As I mentioned earlier, and it is just fine to repeat information so that we're clear, the application is not contingent upon the business type, whether it's a sole proprietor, a partnership, corporation, nonprofit, S Corp. It's about being consistent with the spirit and intent of the grant. And we've talked a lot about that. Nonprofits are eligible, but you have to demonstrate that you have a presence in North Dakota, that you have consumers, you have a marketplace, and that you're making an investment in infection control.
And to clarify, the 50C6s are also eligible?
That is correct, but again, lobbying activities will be excluded, and the 501c6 would have to demonstrate all of those same things. I'll use an example, a Convention and Visitors Bureau. The existence of the Convention and Visitors Bureau is to welcome visitors to our state, which is directly connected to being a consumer in a marketplace. And so for that reason, that entity would be eligible. However, it has to demonstrate that the proposal is also an eligible proposal for infection control and bringing people back into the marketplace.
Another one, can private schools be eligible for this grant?
Yes, they can.
Thank you, Michelle. If we have a physical store, can we use the website costs for this? Customers can shop before coming into our store and purchase online. Is that an eligible cost?
I believe so. I need to confirm that with my team, but I believe that is an eligible expense. We are in that instance, reducing human touch, customer traffic, and inspiring trade. So I'm going to reserve the right to visit with my team on that to confirm that, but I believe so.
And we have a lot of questions coming in, so we'll get to as many as possible. But the question was, we have locations in Minnesota and North Dakota. Do we only consider the North Dakota location?
Yes.
All right. If your business or organization rents space, are you ineligible as you don't have a permanent location?
That is also a great question. We've spent a lot of time deliberating that. This is going to require you to go to your lease agreement more than likely. At the Department of Commerce, we have an obligation to make sure that we do not make a grant to a commercial property owner and a lessor for the improvements to the same property. And it is usually your lease that controls who's able to make those improvements. And so I would recommend going to the lease to determine who makes those improvements. But I'm going to return to what also might be at the heart of that question. If you are a lessor in North Dakota, and that's your physical location for doing business, that would qualify as a North Dakota physical permanent location.
Great. These two are somewhat together. Is there a set grant amounts, and is there a cap on how much you can request?
Yes, thank you for that question, and I apologize if we didn't cover that very, very thoroughly. There is a cap. The grant application is for up to $50,000, and that is if you have one permanent physical location in North Dakota. If you have more than one permanent physical location in North Dakota, you can apply for a grant up to $100,000.
Thank you. Will the application be available to fill out before the July 31st submission time?
Highly unlikely that the application will be available to complete before July 31st. At this point in time, we estimate that the application will be available on July 31st. I realize that as recently as yesterday, I said July 24th. And that is because we are doing a Herculean lift in terms of organizing this process in a very short amount of time. We feel fairly confident that that date, July 31st, will stay firm. We have commitment from our IT partners that we will have a functional application by July 27th, at which time we are going to be creating training for you to walk through an actual application. So that you'll be able to see what you need and how to do it before you're actually doing it. And we highly encourage you to avail yourself to all the resources that we're going to create, because the more prepared you are when you apply online, the more likely you are to receive the award. But we are all operating on a very, very condensed time frame, and so we will appreciate your patience and grace as we work through this process to make it a good experience for you.
And that ties to the next question. Are we supposed to be specific in our application process?
You are going to need to be very specific in your application process. That's why we wanted to have this conversation today, July 9th, to give you an understanding of the spirit and intent of the grant. So today you can, if you're a business that has already invested, that you can begin gathering your receipts and comparing them to what you learned today to see if they are eligible for reimbursement. And if you want to make investments going forward, that you begin to work with your teams to determine what qualifying investments make the most sense for your business. And then you need to proceed to go about getting quotes, getting prices from vendors if it's equipment, from service providers if these are improvements of that type, because all of that information is going to need to be submitted in your proposal.
Several questions on qualifying expenses must fall between what dates? Do you want to remind them of those dates, please?
Yes, absolutely. So we are going to go back to March 27th. That date is significant because that was the date that the CARES Act was passed. And so we're going to go back to that date and allow for reimbursement of qualified expenses. You may have made investments that don't qualify. They have to be qualified investments that are consistent with the spirit and intent of this grant back to March 27th of 2020. And thank you for the opportunity to clarify the end date, because I don't know that I did that earlier. The end date of any possibility to benefit from this grant is December 29th of this year. I believe I mentioned earlier that once you are awarded the grant, if you are awarded the grant, you have 45 days to make the improvements that you submitted in your proposal. That's intentional because, time is of the essence. Time is of the essence to control infection. Time is of the essence to make sure that we're moving forward and not backward with economic activity. And also, another thing I did not mention is that the first grant round is opening on July 31st. If money remains after that grant round closes, then we will offer a round 2 and a round 3. And so, and that's of course only if funding remains available, but we do have intentions that after this grant round is closed, and I'm going to need help from a team member on that date because it is in late August, I believe, that this grant round remains open. If there's money remaining, we will have a second and then a third grant round.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And as I said, there's a lot of questions coming in. Thank you very much for asking these questions. We may not get to all of them. Would equipment such as UV light or UV equipment installed in an HVAC system work?
We have had that question, and it's been one that's processed through our decision-making framework, and yes, it would, because we do believe that that has an impact on infection control. And I also want to add that we have a decision-making framework that we're developing, of course, behind the scenes to determine which investments are approved and which aren't. Where we have questions about whether or not it is a legitimate investment to control infection, we will be consulting the Department of Health. Because, again, the spirit and intent of this grant is to make investments to reduce the spread of infection. Some of those things are going to be very obvious, some may not be, and we will be working with the Department of Health on a second level of review. But to answer that question, that is one that we believe would be eligible.
Thanks. We've had several questions regarding disinfecting safety items that are on back order. What happens if they didn't receive them after 45 days?
Excellent question, and I need to take that back to my team. My preliminary and not firm answer is that if we can show evidence that the order's been placed and your payment has been made, you are not able to control the delivery date on those items. So that's my preliminary answer, but I'm going to ask my team to make note of that to confirm that in a future FAQ.
Like, once again, there's just lots of great questions here, and I'm trying to group them as we get in here. Then once again, this question keeps coming up. Can we use the grant money as reimbursement for expenses we've already incurred for PPE and other direct costs? So if you want to reemphasize that.
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, you can. So if you're a, let's say a salon, and you've invested in masks or disinfectants that you hadn't previously utilized, if you are, for example, a massage parlor that's invested in disposable coverings for your tables or your pillows, those would be qualifying expenses.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions. This is a good one, and I know you can answer this one. Will a copy of the presentation be available to share?
Thank you. Yes, it will. And I believe that I received a text earlier today that it may already be available online. Of course, the recording won't be. The PowerPoint is, I believe, but the recording won't be available until we're done, but we'll get that posted today.
And just a clarification that the government entities are not allowed to apply?
That's correct. And the reason for that is there were billions of dollars made available through the CARES Act in other funding streams. So for example, healthcare institutions, long-term care institutions, while still eligible for this grant, there was $175 billion made available exclusively for those types of organizations through the CARES Act. Similarly, institutions of higher education and the K-12 system had a separate funding stream, and so there are a number of reasons behind that ineligibility, but public institutions of higher education and the K-12 system are not eligible.
Supply chain question, and then we'll just take a few more here. Can supply chain impacts local food restores confidence? Can equipment facilitating local food supply chain improvements qualify?
I am going to reserve comment on that because I'm not sure that I can fully visualize the question, but we'll take that question back to the team and we will build the answer into our FAQs.
Okay, are co-owned businesses ineligible, or can only single-owned businesses apply?
I'm going to answer what I think the question is. Hopefully I'm on the right track, but a partnership, for example, is a co-owned business. It's one model, and a partnership ownership structure is that business is eligible to apply for this grant as long as they meet the other criteria.
A financing question here. Is this program financed by North Dakota Commerce, federally, or both?
This program is made possible because of the CARES Act. Every state in the nation received an allocation of the CARES Act separate from the other more specifically directed CARES Act funding. What I mean by that is this was I believe is the biggest economic stimulus package in the history of our country. The CARES Act delivered expanded unemployment benefits. The CARES Act delivered the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, along with literally dozens of other specific programs. This is one of those programs. The state of North Dakota was able to identify this purpose, and our North Dakota State Legislature's budget section approved this purpose as a meaningful investment of CARES Act money in North Dakota.
The last question here is we were running up against 11:35, and maybe we can take a few more afterwards, but just a reminder that we will try and answer all these questions on our website and in the newsletter. The question is, do you have a preview of the application?
We have seen versions of the draft application, absolutely. And just to provide a little bit of perspective and also to brag on the team at the Department of Commerce a little bit, for the last 118 days, this team, because we care about you and your business, has been working long hours, including these last several weeks and including the many weeks to come as we work through this grant process. And so we literally have teams working on the decision-making framework and the application itself, meeting 3 times a day. So we've seen many versions of the application. It is not final yet, but it's very close. And I'm going to try to make a little bit of a joke, but we're going to delight you because it's going to look like a government form. However, it is going to be online and it will be easy to complete.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. As I said, we'll try and answer all these questions that we can in multiple avenues, but we'll move on to the next slide.
All right. Thank you, Maria, and thank you everybody for those questions. And as Maria said, we will be using the questions that were unanswered, those that I couldn't answer and the ones that we didn't get to build out our FAQs so that you have those answers. It is our goal to make this as easy as possible for you, understanding that we all have an obligation to be responsible stewards of North Dakota resources. And so we have an obligation to make sure that the applications and ultimate awards meet the spirit and intent of this grant application. So I'm going to thank you in advance for your enthusiasm as you think about how your business might use grant proceeds to reduce the spread of infection and to get North Dakota customers safely back into the marketplace. So a couple reminders before we part. I mentioned this earlier, but I would like to remind you that if your business was financially affected by COVID-19 and you have not availed yourself to the Paycheck Protection Program, that deadline to apply was extended to August 8th, as roughly $130 billion remains unspent. The PPP is a loan that can be used for employee payroll and other related expenses and certain operating costs, but this loan is forgivable under certain circumstances. So in other words, it turns into a grant. The Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act became effective June 5th. That relaxed the requirements for loan forgiveness, making it even more appealing to businesses. The PPP, as I said, is available to you through your local lender. We are very fortunate in North Dakota to have a wonderful community banking system that very successfully helped North Dakota businesses through the first round of PPP loans. As I've mentioned before, North Dakota businesses have seen significant benefit from the PPP. And if you've not learned about the PPP, you can learn more about it at ndresponse.gov, COVID resources at the business and employer button, or you can talk to your financial advisor. Your business can also get assistance with the PPP loan and the forgiveness application through your local Small Business Development Center, which you can learn more about at ndsbdc.org. All right. Well, a couple comments on resources. I want to thank you for attending. You can find more information today and into the future on ndresponse.gov, at the Department of Commerce website, social media, and newsletters. We will do press releases along the way, including when the application is ultimately available. We have training sessions estimated for the week of July 27th. We realize that that is very close to when the application itself opens, but I urge you to take part in those training sessions. There will likely be one live session like we're having right now that will be recorded for playback so that you can walk through that application when it's convenient to you. All right, well, thanks again for attending, and thank you for the privilege of supporting you during this time as we work to develop a process to swiftly deploy over $66 million in grant funding in an impactful and responsible way. We will also appreciate your mutual support. I'd like to turn this over to Eric Spencer, President and CEO of the Greater North Dakota Chamber, for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Michelle. Again, I'm Eric.
You're welcome, Eric. Sorry about that.
Again, I'm Eric Spencer, President and CEO of the Greater North Dakota Chamber, and we want to thank everyone who tuned in today for your interest and your questions. To reiterate what was said earlier, the team at Commerce will be using those questions to create resources to assist all of you in the application process. I'd also like to thank the team at Commerce for developing this program to help restore consumer confidence and slow the spread of infection. So kudos to you as well, Michelle and your team. A recording of today's business briefing will be available at ndresponse.gov's COVID-19 page. When you get there, click on the Business and Employer button. This information will also be available at ndchamber.com along with all previous business briefings. You can also go to ndresponse.gov for more information on this program as it's developed, as well as a variety of resources to assist you in your business, be North Dakota smart, and learn more about what's happening with the North Dakota Smart Restart guidelines. Again, be prepared to register for additional training the week of July 27th, which will include walking through the actual application with the hypothetical business, along with additional guidance to successfully apply for this grant. In closing, on behalf of both the Greater North Dakota Chamber and the North Dakota Department of Commerce, thank you and stay safe.
Thank you for joining the special session of business briefing. The live session has now ended.